What a headshot! What a head!
How's it guys, this is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to take you guys to my very own team selection for the upcoming Blank Game Week 8. So yes, Blank Game Week 8, if you guys have been living under a rock or simply have not been keeping up with the FPL news, 3 games have been postponed for the upcoming game week. Kind of talking about the upcoming game week, please remember that this will be a Friday night deadline, at least my own time. Could be morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you guys are around the world, but please make sure that's going to be in your calendars or you've set an alarm. You don't have to set an alarm on your own, you can also just put my notifications on for YouTube or on my Twitter page, as we'll be going live with the deadline stream 1 hour before the deadline. So make sure that you guys are there, and hopefully I do see you. But talking about this upcoming team selection, I might have actually activated a chip going into Game Week 8's deadline. You probably can guess which chip that's going to be, so I'll be giving you guys some confirmation as well as my latest draft going into this upcoming Game Week 8 deadline. Now I'll start off the video talking about some fixtures because we have had a kind of massive bombshell dropped on us today, so fresh off the press, a potential Game Week 12 postponement. But after that, don't worry, I'll be going over all my draft selections and kind of explaining my reasoning behind the chip usage. So know that you guys are absolutely amped for that, so sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So the first talking point, as I mentioned, the fixture kind of watch. Unfortunately, today was a massive kind of bomb, as I mentioned. Not too massive, to be honest, because we can simply adjust our strategy as it is in a couple game weeks' time. So that major announcement was that Man City vs Arsenal in Game Week 12 has been postponed due to the fact that Arsenal have to play PSV in the Europa League. Now, fortunately, kind of the fixture swing for Liverpool begins in Game Week 12, so Kevin De Bruyne could easily become someone like a Salah if you guys are on the Game Week 8 wildcard. Otherwise, just maybe go into Game Week 12 with 2 free transfers to strip to those Liverpool assets. But this has actually been quite major news because a lot of us do own these Man City assets. I know on a wildcard draft, I actually had 3 Man City assets plus an Arsenal asset, but if you guys aren't wildcarding, chances are you probably have 2 or 3 of them. So that might actually be a maximum amount of players missing in your FPL team, so please just make sure that you analyze this and discuss it for your own situation. If you guys are on a Game Week 8 wildcard, don't stress too much, but what I would suggest to you guys is make sure that you have a transfer plan going into Game Week 12, whether that be kind of a reliable bench, just simply bench a Haaland, a Cancelo, that sort of thing, or kind of leading up to Game Week 12, you take those Man City assets or those Arsenal assets out in preparation. Now the one thing to please note is that Man City's fixtures after Game Week 12 are still pretty splendid, and that's why I wouldn't kind of get rid of all of them, and I'd probably just bench a Haaland and a Cancelo. But KDB, easy switch to Salah there in that situation, but hopefully Liverpool are on better form than they currently are come Game Week 12. Now I just want to mention this because obviously if you guys are on a wild card, if you want to use some free transfers, please keep this in mind. But generally, I don't really think it puts me off the Man City assets. I might not be bringing in too many Arsenal assets in the upcoming game week, but if you want to be taking those Arsenal assets out in Game Week 8 or 9 in preparation for Game Week 12. But now going on to the Game Week 8 fixtures, and yet again, I'm going to remind you guys about the blank Game Week 8. The first fixture that's not been listed yet because it's already been postponed is going to be Brighton vs Crystal Palace. So weirdly enough, the reason that game was postponed was because there was going to be a train strike. The train strike has been postponed because of obvious kind of events that have happened recently, and therefore the reasoning for that game being postponed has actually been postponed. But no, the Prem has not kind of reinstated that game. It seems like there's too much admin and logistics to doing that, so therefore that game is still going to remain a blank. So added to that Brighton vs Crystal Palace game, we now have 2 more blanks. The first one, United vs Leeds, right at the bottom there, then also the Chelsea vs Liverpool game as well. So both those 2 games have fallen away, and just a reminder, if you guys have also been living under a rock like the previous talking point, I just want to showcase the Game Week 8 fixtures. Now I also want to kind of let you guys know that you don't have to worry about any other postponements. There might be some freak weather or something like that, but don't worry too much. The odds of that happening aren't too strong. Touch wood that doesn't happen for Game Week 8, but I do think most of these fixtures are 100% fine to go for, and therefore you guys don't have to worry about them. But now we're going to go on to the actual team selection part of this video, and the first thing I want to show you guys is not kind of the Game Week 7 review. Don't worry, Game Week 7 was a full postponement. You guys can see on the right hand side, 0 points scored in Game Week 7, a Game Week rank of 1, which is actually a lie. I think I came 6.7 millionth because I did make a free transfer, but we still did have a green arrow to 1.6 million, but that was only slight. Going into Game Week 8, we did have 2 free transfers and 0.6 in the bank, but I think those transfers are going to be negated. So the reason I wanted to showcase the kind of Game Week 8 team selection before any transfers are used, before any chips are activated, was I always like to show you guys the context behind my decisions. So I'll be running through this kind of Game Week 8 team selection super fast because this doesn't really matter that much, but in terms of the decision making, it is quite integral. So starting off on our bench, you guys can see that I'm currently benching Diallo and Archer. Yes, they do have a fixture in Game Week 8, but I'm not really confident of them actually starting these games. Archer will probably definitely get 0 points. Diallo might start, but not super confident of him getting any returns. Then obviously Sanchez and Cucurella both have a blank Game Week 8. Heading on to our goalkeeper department, actually quite a big talking point this week because I do have a fixture with Danny Ward, but the fact of the matter is that Leicester are simply terrible defensively, and although Spurs lost to Sporting last night, I'm not really confident of him getting any save points or actually a clean sheet. So for me, I'm kind of considering Ward as an almost blank option player. Yes, he could actually get negative points, which is going to be the worst case scenario, but he's one of the reasons why I actually used the chip at the end of the day. I do think though if I went for Nick Pope over Sanchez, I might have actually had a little bit of a debate there to activate the chip because Nick Pope has a great fixture. Heading onto our backline, the left hand side, Trent, James, respective fixture has been postponed and therefore these two players are missing out. Trippier and Cancelo on the other hand, both these two players have great fixtures on paper. Bournemouth at home is a great fixture, Wolves away is a great fixture. Both these two players are actually on my wildcard draft, so I'm perfectly fine with playing them. Going into our midfield department, Salah, Diaz both missing out on that respective game against Chelsea, and then we do have two players in Andreas Pereira and Martinelli. So both these two options have great fixtures like our defensive department. I was perfectly fine playing them, but unfortunately the rest of my defense and my midfield department don't have fixtures. Then heading onto our forward line, Haaland and Jesus both have games, both look pretty strong. You guys will see in the ultimate guide coming up tomorrow, both their attacking stats are pretty strong from Arsenal and Man City's point of view, and Wolves and Brentford aren't the best defensive sides. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of remove the players without a fixture, and as you guys can see, it removes the majority of my team. Yes, Diallo and Archer could come on, maybe they could get 1 or 2 points, who kind of knows, but I'm pretty confident that they will actually miss out. So 7 total players in my starting 11, so therefore I would have to take a -8 hit, 2 transfers on top of the 2 free transfers, and to be honest, taking a -8 hit just to wildcard in game week 9 potentially wasn't worth it in my opinion. So if you guys did watch my transfer plan, I did discuss kind of doing potential moves. I could take out someone like a Trent for a Perisic, Salah for KDB, maybe even a Diaz for Saka, that sort of thing, but taking the hits at this stage of the season with the wildcard in my back pocket that I have to use before game week 16 was quite appealing. So I guess that's the big question about my own team selection. Should I wildcard or should I not wildcard? Comment down below what you guys think I should have done, but I actually have activated it a couple days ago. So if you guys are following me on Twitter or on my Discord channel, I did announce that I've activated the wildcard chip, so therefore it's officially wildcard week. Now I actually did ask you guys also on my Twitter page, should I wildcard that specific team? A lot of you actually said yes, I think it was about 60 to 40%. I personally believe that I should have wildcarded because with 7 players in my starting 11, I'd have to take a -8 hit, potentially wildcarding game week 9. That just didn't make sense to me, so I brought it 1 game week earlier, and I'll discuss the reasoning behind that a little bit more in tomorrow's ultimate guide. But all you guys have to know is that I have activated the wildcard chip. I would recommend doing so if you have a similar team to my own, but if you want a wildcard game week 9 or onwards, that's perfectly fine. So now let's go on to the actual team selection or my kind of latest wildcard draft inverted commas. I'll be obviously finalizing this in the Dayline stream, but also probably will do a final wildcard draft after considering all the factors from the Europa League and also the final Champions League games tonight. So please keep that in mind when you are watching this video. I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so therefore there is still European football and also there's obvious press conferences coming up on Friday and also Thursday. So starting off with the boring factors, bottom right hand side 0.4 in the bank, and I'll discuss where I'm going to use that money in the future at the end of this kind of team selection. Going on to our bench department, I've got Danny Ward here, Maddison, James and Patterson. So probably the big talking point is benching those more premium assets. Maddison and James is obviously understandable, has a blank fixture, but Maddison, the reason I brought him in was because if you guys have watched my previous videos, has great fixtures in game week 9 and game week 10, and therefore I wanted to include him as I don't have to use a free transfer next week. We did not ever speak about maybe taking a punt on a Kulusevski, wasn't too confident of Spurs yesterday after that loss against Sporting, and therefore I just went safe. I'm not going to kind of plan any future transfers, so Maddison comes in and sits on the bench. Now obviously I could also start him. I think the fact that they lost against Sporting last night, Spurs I'm talking about, kind of gives you some hope that maybe Leicester can score, but I just think in general I do prefer my starting 11 fixtures. Danny Ward's a no-brainer at 4.0 million, the only kind of starter at that cheap price point. And then I have actually included Patterson here from Everton because I do think he's semi-nailed at that fullback position. I know that Coleman's always on the bench and on the wings, could potentially come into that side, but I do think Patterson's played pretty well this Premier League season. Now he comes in here because game week 12, I could always start him in my starting 11. If I'm going to bench a Cancelo, a Haaland, that sort of thing, I need a reliable option, and I actually do like Patterson. But taking the bench in isolation isn't how you guys should do this, so let's move on to the starting 11 so you guys get the full context. So starting off in goal, you probably predicted it, it's going to be Nick Pope, has Bournemouth at home, Newcastle defending pretty well at the moment, and in terms of FPL goalkeepers, doesn't get much better than Nick Pope. Now I do think the game week 8 fixture makes Nick Pope worth it because after that kind of game week 9 to game week 11 don't look that strong, but I do still favour him to get those save points, and that's always super useful in FPL. Moving on to our back line, our most expensive defender is going to be João Cancelo from Man City. Has Wolves away, a great fixture on paper there, and I do really trust that Man City defense. The stats look strong. We will mention that in the Ultimate Guide coming up tomorrow. But also, if Gomez does start at left back, we could always have Cancelo at right back, his favourite position where he is a lot more attacking. Now the nice thing about Cancelo is it's kind of an easy gateway if we do want Trent in the future. Yes, we might not want to lose Cancelo, but if he's not keeping up with the attacking form, then he's an easy switch to the Liverpool fullback. Next up though, kind of accompanying Nick Pope is going to be his colleague Trippier. So the reason I like Trippier is not only like Nick Pope has that defensive threat, but also that attacking threat. Massive chance creation stats because he's on all free kicks and also direct free kicks. So the attacking threat is also pretty strong. Now Trippier is in my own team like Cancelo, and therefore he's not going anywhere and has been a mainstay on most wildcard drafts for Game Week 8 that I've seen. Now the final defender to go for is probably the one where there could be some controversy. I've included Emerson here, but if he does play in that Thursday night game for West Ham in the European competition, I probably will take him out. Now the reason behind this is that I really do need kind of a nailed starter in my starting 11 for Game Week 8. As you guys can see, my bench has literally no coverage. Yes, we could always start Patterson, but when you guys do see my midfield, we'll kind of understand there. I'm not going to play the odds, and I hope that West Ham do score. But the one option that we can actually use is that 0.4 in the bank. We could upgrade kind of Emerson to a more reliable option with that Game Week 12 blank on the horizon, Man City vs Arsenal. We might actually need a full nailed starting bench and also starting 11. Now unfortunately Emerson isn't really that nailed. We have had news that Cressol's back in training, and therefore Emerson's spot could be kind of rotated, especially if West Ham are going to take the European competition quite seriously. But overall, the defensive department I do like. I think there's a massive clean sheet threat here, massive attacking threat, and as you guys know, I always do go for the fullbacks. Now moving on to midfield department is going to start off with Kevin De Bruyne, like Cancelo, our most expensive midfielder from Man City, and I really like Kevin over these next few fixtures. Now Man City at the moment are a completely different team, head and shoulders above any team in the Prem at the moment, and that's why kind of the chance creation for De Bruyne with Haaland is off the charts, and also the fact that he likes getting forward and hopefully gets a goal or two in the next 3. Now there is another obvious reason why I do have Kevin De Bruyne here. It's because he's kind of a cash cow for Salah. When I do want to take KDB out before Game Week 12, I can easily take him to Salah with only a little bit in the bank. So yes, great fixtures on paper. I do prefer him to someone like a Son. We saw last night Son's form or bad form has continued, and I do worry about a benching in the next couple games. Next up is going to be our cheapest. So we've gone from our most expensive midfielder to our cheapest midfielder. It's going to be Andres Pereira from Fulham. Now the fixture on paper is better than the Madison one, and that's why I'm starting Andres Pereira, but I could always switch these two around. Nottingham Forest away, the worst defensive stats in the Prem at the moment, and that's why I just had to go for the Fulham midfielder. So yes, this might be a little bit of a punt there, and I know that he is 4.5, but I do have faith in him to actually get me some returns in Game Week 8. Now a player that's been super consistent with the returns as well is going to be Martinelli from Arsenal. I've included him here. Yes, he does blank in Game Week 12, but I do think he's actually worth his value at the current moment. We do still have quite a bit of value in Martinelli, to be honest. But I just think with Arsenal's attacking form, even though there are some tough fixtures coming up, at his price point, still worth it in my opinion. So he's kind of a no-brainer for me because of his consistency, and with Smith Rowe still battling with that injury, he should be nailed in that starting 11. Now last midfielder to go for, I've kind of pondered a little bit on Jared Bowen. I've actually gone for him in this kind of team selection, but I did also go for a draft with Saka in, because basically what it comes down to is this is going to be a player for the next 2 fixtures. While I'm saying the next 2 fixtures is after that, in Game Week 10, I'm going to move whoever is in this placeholder spot for Zaha, as he has some great fixtures coming up. So who do you guys think scores more points in the next 2? Kind of Jared Bowen, Everton and Wolves in the next 2, or someone like a Saka? He has Brentford and then Spurs. Currently, just on terms of fixtures, I think Bowen slightly edges it, but I will be monitoring his playing time on Thursday in that European competition. So just keep that in mind that this spot could also be a placeholder for someone else, could even go back to Kulusevski if I want to take a punt, but as I mentioned, that's kind of locking in a transfer for probably Game Week 9. But now going on to our forward line, and a no-brainer here is going to be Erling Haaland. Has that Wolves away game, great fixture on paper. Want to see if he plays actually tonight, how many minutes he gets, because he might be rotated come Saturday afternoon. So just keep that in mind. I don't really think he'll be rotated, but it is always a possibility. But Haaland's going nowhere on my wildcard draft. But now we go on to our final 2 forward spots where I think there's 3 options competing. It's going to be Mitrovic, it's going to be Tony, and it's going to be Isaac. For me, all 3 of those players, they have reliable points returns in my opinion, have great fixtures coming up, but it's going to be picking 2 out of the 3. Now the first option that I'm going to go for is kind of the more no-brainer one. It's going to be Mitrovic from Fulham. The fixtures on paper look splendid. He's a nail kind of talisman for them. Has been scoring against better opposition than he currently has in the upcoming fixtures. And that's why for me he's the more nailed out of those 3. So Mitrovic comes in like Andres Pereira, Nottingham Forest away, great fixture on paper, but now let's go on to our final striker. So between Ivan Toney and Isaac, it's a super tough debate, and that's why if you guys want to go for either of them, I can honestly understand why. And the reason for that is that Ivan Toney's on penalties, nailed to start every single game, is apparently on direct free kicks at the moment, and therefore it's kind of Brentford's main talisman. But I do think that the Brentford games are slightly worse than the Newcastle games, and that's why I've currently gone for Isaac. Now, there's been a lot of talk over on FPL Twitter about Callum Wilson's return. When will it be? Make sure that you stay tuned for that Eddie Howe press conference either tomorrow or on Friday. But I honestly think that although Callum Wilson might come back from injury, Isaac should still be nailed in that starting 11. I mean, Newcastle haven't paid kind of 70 odd million for a player on the bench, and that's why I think Isaac will either be on the wing or up front. Now, yes, on the wing, I don't really like him as a forward. I do prefer him kind of in the center forward or whatever, but he might actually play better off Callum Wilson, who kind of knows. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I'm a fixture man. I'm going to be going for the Game Week 8 Bournemouth home fixture, as that just simply looks like FPL points. But as I mentioned, if you guys want to go for Ivan Toney, you can completely understand why. So as you guys can see on your screen here, the bench, the starting 11 of my latest wildcard draft. However, I do think there might be 1 or 2 changes. I'm heavily considering the fact that Emerson is probably going to play on Thursday for West Ham, and therefore that 0.4 might be used to upgrade him to a more reliable option. Let me know how your guys' wildcard drafts are coming along. Do they look quite similar to me? Probably. There definitely is a template going into this Game Week 8 wildcard, but there are 1 or 2 changes that might actually give you some more points. So as I said, let me know in the comments down below, and let me know what you guys think about my wildcard draft. Try not to roast it too hard. Now, the final talking point to go over is going to be all about captaincy, and for this week, I'm going to be going for Erling Haaland. Kind of a no-brainer for me. However, if we do get some news about potential rotation, I do think I could always switch to Kevin De Bruyne, as they have the same fixture. I just think the effective ownership and the safe option is definitely going to be on the side of Erling Haaland, and that's why he's my captain. And the reason I left it last is because there's not too much of a debate in my own wildcard team. If you guys want to go for Harry Kane, I'd be super tempted, but after watching them last night against Sporting, the temptation has died down a little bit. But this is basically up for the video, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. Please like if you did and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Ultimate Guide coming tomorrow, then also a deadline stream on Friday, so make sure that you guys are there and make sure those teams are locked in before the Game Week 8 deadline. But I'm signing off. It's been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.